is Tariq Talk. Your host, Tariq Mendez, takes you on a journey with guests from all around the world. Broadcasting around the world. Around the world. This is Tariq Talk.
Guys, today I'm here with Jaiquan. Jaiquan, how are you today?
I'm okay. How are you?
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. We're here today at Silver Art Projects. You're one of the first artists from this term that I'm interviewing. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Do you mind sharing your Instagram and website with us, please?
My Instagram is Jaiquan_Fayson.
Okay.
And my website is jaiquanfayson.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
I am currently, I would be considered an up-and-coming artist. I'm relatively new to contemporary art. And I'm an art educator. I'm also an art teacher.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a certified New York State art teacher. I'm one of the justice impacted artists and the Silver Art program. So I'm formerly incarcerated, and yeah, I've had to work a little bit harder and navigate a little bit to find my way here and to move beyond my circumstances. So I have completed my master's at the School of Visual Arts in 2023.
Oh, wow, congrats.
Thank you. And I'm just here, just trying to move away from what I've been doing in the past, more illustration, and move more toward contemporary art.
Oh, wow. And I have to say your work is amazing.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your creative process, please?
So currently I'm working on, again, trying to move beyond fine art, which would be considered more portraiture and sort of painting, more traditional art, and trying to move more towards a more contemporary aesthetic, exploring mediums, exploring surfaces, exploring objects, and just having more of a variety of expression, of visual expression, and less of a focus on solely just my ability to paint and my ability to draw or my ability to sculpt.
And have you always been an artist, like from when you were young? Have you always had that interest in drawing and creating art?
I have been drawing since I can probably remember being able to think.
Oh, wow, really?
So I drawing is probably intrinsically a part of who I am.
Oh, nice.
So drawing is my foundation. So I think in the past I've dealt with issues of whether or not I would consider myself an artist, or in some cases just someone who knows how to draw. So again, I'm trying my hardest to move, not trying my hardest, but I'm trying to move more towards expressing myself in a particular way and beyond just being someone who knows how to draw.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. And can you tell us a little bit about your studio practice? Like when you come into the studio, are you an artist that you get to work right away, or do you kind of have to meditate, read the newspaper, have a coffee, or can you just dive right in?
I tend to be a bit more, I wouldn't say disorganized, but a little bit more cluttered because of, as an artist, I'm a little bit more physical. And I like to, in the past, I've also worked with my hands. I've done some work as a handyman, and I really like the idea of actually feeling something of I've also worked as a sculptor. So a lot of times when I'm working, it's a lot more physical. I'm moving around, I'm moving things from space to space, and sometimes my studio tends to get cluttered. So generally when I come in, I try to clean off my table as much as possible so I can get started. And from there, I usually get to work.
Oh, nice. And then when you're creating like sculptures and paintings, are you creating like each one like from start to finish, or do you kind of like move around from like one painting to the other, like one medium to the other? Are you more like strict, like where you like to start and finish each piece, or you more have fun with it?
Well, my work my art is I try to be a little bit more thoughtful,
Uh-huh.
and I try to pack as much information as I can, if possible, into my work.
Hmm.
So I do tend to bounce around from piece to piece. Sometime I need time to be able to think and to be able to see the work, to pull back, to step back and focus on what I'm doing and not be. I think unfortunately sometimes I get a little bit self-assured
Hmm.
that because I know how to draw, that the work, looks good while I'm working. So often, and I work with oil paint.
Uh-huh.
So often I need time to let the painting dry and time to pull back again so I can see what exactly is going on and what I can improve or what I can add or what I can subtract, to make the painting work a bit better. So it's very rare that I'm working, that I work from start to finish on one project. And a lot of times most of my projects tend to affect each other in some way.
Hmm.
I try to make things a bit more harmonious.
Hmm.
So if I am working on a series, I'll work on maybe 2 or 3 pieces within the series at the same time, and that gives me also a space where I can say, maybe this is working a little bit better, and this one isn't, or maybe I can take some ideas from this and add them, or just gives me a lot of room to edit.
Okay. That was actually going to be my next question. So let's say like when you start a painting and it's maybe not turning out the way you want it to be, do you ever like transfer to like a sculpture or vice versa? Like if something doesn't work out for like one type of medium, do you like to use that for another type of medium?
Well, I haven't exactly done that yet.
Hmm.
I think, and I do have instances where, for instance, there's a painting back here, a
Hmm.
drawing back here that we can't. I don't know. I'm not sure if we can see it yet, but that initially started out as a drawing that I was going to turn into a painting,
Hmm.
and then I realized I'm drawing a sculpture that
Oh,
I'm coming up with this sculpture in my
yeah.
mind, and the idea was to have a painting of a sculpture.
Oh, wow.
But at some point I said, you know what, I can actually sculpt. So why wouldn't I just
Yeah.
actually sculpt it, and have it there? And if I needed to use it as a model, I can also use it as a model.
Oh, nice.
So in some instances, there's some overlap between my ability to sculpt and using my sculpture as my models. I'm also still working somewhat as an illustrator.
Hmm.
I'm once again I'm up and coming, so I have to be able to pay my bills, be able to
Yeah.
pay rent, and in many cases, I use my own models. I have some clay models here. I use my own models as reference,
Oh, wow. Okay.
for lighting, for anatomy, for those sorts of things.
Oh, that's dope. And then, like throughout day to day, are you always thinking creatively, or are you able to like kind of disconnect a little bit from like the creative side of your brain, or are you always like coming up with ideas and thinking creatively?
I Art is probably it's probably it's the biggest chunk of my life.
Hmm.
So I think once I start, you know, during the day thinking about my what I need to work on next. There's maybe 2 ways of thinking about you know how I'm gonna go about it. In some ways, I'm thinking creatively and thinking about ideas and how can I represent those ideas and have those ideas more established. And then another way, I'm thinking about the actual process.
Hmm.
Like I may be on a train. I do a lot of drawing on the train, and I'm that guy that's like staring at people.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'm looking at people for like skin color or like lighting or different aspects of painting or sculpting that I can incorporate into my work to improve my work. But that's different from thinking creatively in a way where I'm trying to solve a problem that I feel like an aesthetic problem of my work, like how my work communicates to other people, or how I can show an idea as opposed to a technique.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's pretty dope. And I have a question. A lot of like young artists write to me to ask future artists that I interview about this.
Yes.
Which I think is an interesting question. A lot of them, like, they say they struggle with going to like the studio and then creating a piece of art, and then the piece of art not turning out how they thought it would be in their, like, from their brain to physical, and then getting frustrated. They, some of them break it, some of them come back to the next day. How does that work for you? Are you able to, like, if like the project you're working on is not going as you thought, are you able to kind of like say, okay, I'll come back tomorrow, or do you kind of like break it like some people do? What is that like for you?
For me, my work, my artist takes a bit longer, but for that reason, I tend to be a lot more patient, and I work with materials that I think are more forgiving. I work with oil paint. I work with sculpture, and I tend to work with, again, materials that can be modified, over time.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I use Roma plastilina clay. Okay. It's a non-hardening clay, and it can be reused, and it gives me the opportunity to, if I need to modify something, I can just remove clay. I can just add more clay, and I can I can have a sculpture sitting for a week, 2 weeks, without touching it, and giving me the time to take a look and not rush. A lot of my work is also has a component of being patient. I think sometimes I may look at a work and either be happy with it or not be completely satisfied with it, and then you come back 3 or 4 days later and you take a look and like, wow, I did that. I didn't realize it was that good. So I think you have to be forgiving of yourself and also of the work.
That's beautifully said.
And then you also have to be willing to persevere.
Yeah.
So I think I have like kind of an example here. This is a painting that I did recently for a movie, and it's gonna be like the poster for the movie.
Oh, congrats.
I'm still working somewhat, again, as an illustrator, and these are basically just the same painting, but a different angle.
Yeah.
And one is a little bit more complete than the other one. One is a little bit more finished than the other, but it's a similar feeling of I'm not the type of person who would immediately get frustrated and say, what, I need to start over. I'll put one down and start a new painting, and while this one is drying, I can come back eventually and say, well, I have the option now to work on this one or work on that one, and to keep going. So
that's amazing. And then how do ideas come to you? Like, going back to your creative process, like, do ideas come to you like during the day? Like, do you prefer getting creative like during the day, during the night, or whenever inspiration comes to you?
I am very much a night person.
Yeah.
I'm a very much a
What's
nighttime
your sign?
person. I'm a Cancer.
Oh, you're a Cancer. Okay.
So ideas come to me generally through inspiration about and in several ways. It could be a book.
Mm-hmm.
It could be looking at someone else's work. We went to the Armory show recently. I went to the Armory show recently, and it was my first time being at an event like that, and just seeing what was possible. Sometimes you look at work and you say, what, that may be a little simple, or it may be too complex, But for me, the idea that someone else can accomplish some of these things inspires me to feel like I can accomplish, what I want to accomplish. And the creative process for me is different. I'm also drawing ideas from a lot of different places. I'm with a lot of my work that I'm currently showing, and that I want to push more towards. It's very layered in a way of having a lot of as much information as possible. So I want to be able to combine not just my ability to draw and paint, but also my experience as an artist, what I like as an artist, what artists inspire me. My experience as a human being is also very important, and also trying to communicate, trying to find a way to communicate that isn't. So when I do illustration, it's a little bit more of what they call on the nose. It's I'm trying to give you the story, and I'm hoping that you can see this and immediately say, all right, I see what this is about. I get it, and have that information in that way. It's kind of like a stop sign. You should know immediately when you see this to stop, as opposed to working in a more contemporary art way where you're hoping that two things happen. You're hoping that someone can look at it and find somewhere that they can relate to it, an entry point for them and within their own, within their own mind, but then also that it's not so on the nose, that they're willing to ask questions, that they're willing to look a little bit deeper, that they want to look deeper, that they want to discover more about the work, that they want to discover more about the artist, that they want to find something that they can relate to, or something that they can understand, or even something that they don't understand, and that they're willing to, again, explore and find out more about it.
That's pretty dope. And do you like that interaction with the viewer, like seeing other people see your work and tell you what they see within your work, or do you kind of just like to observe people and see them admire your work from afar?
Well, again, I'm relatively new. I'm an up and coming artist, and I've been in a few shows, and I think one of the great things about being at the Silver Art program, is that I do have a lot of people who come in and take a look at the work and ask questions, and just generally people who are interested in the work here. Before I worked here, I was in my studio in Bushwick, and it was a great studio. It was a very nice space, and I really enjoyed the space. But it was also in the basement. It was kind of not, and it was in Bushwick. It's a great location, but it's also not being in the World Trade Center. Where people are like, you're on the 28th floor in the World Trade Center. They want to be here. So in the past, it was a little bit more challenging to get people to come in to see my work. And here, where it comes across as a bit more prestigious, it's really good to be able to have people come in and take a look at the work. And I'm still at the point of trying to figure out how I can get people to talk about my work. How I can influence them to find out what it is they feel about it without going into a conversation and trying to explain it to them. So there's some times where I get a bit excited, and I'm like, look, I did this, and I want to, talk about it and explain it, and how I got from point A to point B. But more recently, again, especially moving into a more contemporary art sense, I would love for people to come in and be able to tell me, how they feel about my work and what they think about it.
That's beautifully said. And can you share with us some future projects you have coming up, or anything you're working on at the moment?
So I am currently working on. I'm not sure if we can see it here, but more recently, again moving into a more contemporary art sense. I'm showing at the Center for Art and Advocacy Gallery, a new gallery that opened very recently, and the show closes very soon. It's been up for a few months, but it closes on the 20th. Thank you. It's a group show, and I've been working on these prison mirrors. These are actual prison mirrors.
Oh wow!
And I was able to source these online. They're pretty difficult to get, unless you have, I guess, like particular clearance.
Yeah.
If you have to work in law enforcement. So I was very fortunate to be able to get them. And again, I just want to be able to explore mediums, explore different surfaces. I'm using an older medium. It's tempera grassa. It's basically oil paint, but it's mixed with egg yolk.
Oh, okay.
So it's very old. It's an ancient, ancient medium, but it lasts forever.
Yeah.
It lasts. I mean, not forever, but it lasts a relatively long time. There are paintings from the Renaissance that from before the Renaissance that are still here, and because of the egg yolk, it sticks really well.
Yeah.
And it's also it's durable. It's very durable, and it's also malleable. So it can flex and bend if it needs to, but it's also resist chipping and hardening in that way.
And how did you get into that? That's really fascinating.
So I graduated from SVA. I studied. I actually studied at the School of Visual Arts.
Okay.
I graduated with BFA in illustration in 2015. And then completed my master's in art education in 2023. But in 2015, around that time, before then, I think I may have learned about oil painting in 2012.
Okay.
Very recently. And before that, I was interested in comic books and cartoons, and I always thought I would kind of be like a comic book artist. And then I learned about oil painting at LaGuardia Community College, and it like exploded, opened up a whole new world for me, of possibilities, and I learned about art history, and I had been to museums before, but I had never actually taken the time to look, to really look at the work, to really see the work, I think a lot of time we go to museums. I know in my experience, I've gone to museums and kind of looked and, marveled at the beauty and, but when I started attending classes at SVA, I was forced into a position where, for one, I always had this analogy of like being a big fish in a small pond. At LaGuardia, I was an artist that, was a much smaller school. It had a smaller art department. If I knew how to draw really well, I started to learn about oil painting, and there I was kind of celebrated as like someone who knew how to draw really well, someone who could paint efficiently. And then when you move into SVA, now you're here where everyone is an artist. Yeah. So now you're just a small fish in a big pond in the ocean, and there I had to really push myself, to focus on techniques, to focus on, to combine everything that I'm learning and to make sense of it and to make it hopefully into something substantial. And then that put me in a place where if I'm going to see art, I better be really thinking about it, and paying attention to it and taking my time, and also forcing myself to pay attention to it and not just, looking at it and saying, wow, this is beautiful, So I have to think about it in several contexts, in a historical context and the context of application, what's the medium that the artist chose to work with? Why did they choose to use that medium? how are they applying the medium? What's the social context? Hopefully if it's something from antiquity, what were they doing back then? Why is this person depicted like this, or why is this object depicted like this? So there's so many different layers that go into just looking at a work, that I've learned from having been at SVA and pushing myself to consider how I'm gonna work, and how I'm gonna, what I'm hoping to get across with my own work.
That's beautiful. And do you have any like dream projects that you want to do without like thinking of budget or like time restraint? If there's anything like you could do that have complete freedom, no budget?
I don't know. I'm not. I mean, a lot of what I'm doing is discovering and kind of learning and going along as I go. And I do tend to write down a lot of my ideas and a lot of my thoughts. I feel like right now I'm kind of working on my dream project.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's beautiful.
I don't, I haven't. Again, I'm relatively new to contemporary art, so I haven't had any project that I felt like would be a dream project. Just in my experience, just being here is, is a dream come true. I'm in a studio where the vast majority of artists here are much more established. There's so many artists here who have really good ideas, have beautiful work, and such a huge variety of work that for me, just being able to be included in this setting is, says to me that someone has recognized my ability and that I'm moving in the right direction. So it's not so much that I have a project that I felt like would be a dream project. I just want to continue working. I just want to continue moving forward with the ideas that I have and sort of editing those ideas. Every once in a while I come up with an idea that I think is great. And then, maybe I've realized that someone else may have done something similar, or maybe I realized that the idea may not be as great as I thought it was. And I just want to hold on to the ideas that I feel like are worth it and accomplish those ideas. And at one point I wanted to do, I have some paintings here that are more life size, and I would love to continue to work at a larger scale. But I'm also realizing that working at a smaller scale can also be effective. It can also provide a different feeling. Working at a larger scale may be a bit more open.
Yeah.
And working at a smaller scale may be a bit more intimate. So I don't have a project that I feel like is necessarily a dream project. I just want to continue my life's work.
That's beautifully said. Wow. Really nice. Going back to, you previously mentioned about being incarcerated. Do you think that has impacted your work today?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Being incarcerated has absolutely impacted my work. So I don't know. I feel like I'm going to go on a long
Please do.
rant of a story now. So yes, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Unfortunately, raised by a single mother. My mother has, she's done her absolute best to make sure we had all of our necessities. And, my mother's phenomenal. She's been a huge part of my inspiration as an artist and as a person. Unfortunately, I didn't have as much guidance as I probably could have, as a youth. And we lived in conditions of poverty for some time. My family was in and out of shelters, and my mother was receiving public assistance, to take care of me and my siblings. And again, my mother's worked hard also, on her part to overcome those circumstances. But there was a time where I didn't have a lot of guidance, and I started to see things that were going on around me in my neighborhood, and I started to pick up on those things, and wanting to be visible, and wanting to feel like I was somebody, that I was worth something. And those, in a neighborhood where committing crimes or, committing to more negative acts can be seen as you being important because they brought attention, and I hope people would understand, especially like in the context of the internet, where like if you have any kind of attention, negative or positive attention, people are still paying attention.
Yeah.
So, I went along a path that was a bit more irresponsible and definitely more harmful to me and people around me as well. And I didn't complete high school. I was incarcerated. I was in prison and in jail for the first time at 16 years old.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it was really challenging. It was really challenging, and at the time I kind of saw it as like a rites of passage. I had this like sort of skewed sense that this would somehow make me a man. If I could endure, having been in prison or having been in jail, and if I was tough enough to survive, that would make me a man. And also coming home and going back to those neighborhoods where some of these things at the time were kind of celebrated, not in a sense of like where people felt happy that I was, came home from prison, but where, again, people saw it as, kind of something that made you tougher, made you more manly in that sense. And yeah, it was just not a very good time during my life, a very much more confusing time. And I ended up, dealing with recidivism, going back and forth to prison and going back and forth to jail and then eventually to prison, because jail and prison are two totally different things. And it wasn't until I ended up in solitary confinement for a total of 180 days. And well, it was actually 90 days at a time, 3 months at a time.
Back to back, or
kind of back to back, kind of back to back. I was in my youth, I wasn't very responsible, and I had a lot of like misplaced anger, and a lot of times I would get into fights intentionally so I could be isolated. I'm not the most extroverted. I'm really good, in some environments where, if I have to teach or if I have to be at a gathering, I can perform as an extrovert. I'm pretty good with speaking with people and dealing with people, but in my heart, I tend to like to be alone. So I would get into fights, and thinking this is going to get me away from people so I can be isolated. And then you're in isolation for so long and you're like, I haven't seen a person's face or heard a person's voice for, clearly for so long, besides like hearing someone muffled screaming, through the gate or whatever the case is. And that becomes, depressing. And I started to focus more on art, more on drawing while I was in prison, and it's particularly in isolation. So it became useful to me in several ways. It became a means of commerce. So in prison, I started to focus on, doing portraits for people, and I could do portraits and trade portraits for food, like a bartering system. I could trade portraits for food. I could draw holiday cards. I could draw all of these sorts of different things, and use art in that way to help compensate for things that I didn't have. But then also it served as a means of therapy, and to help me pass the time and escape my situation, my circumstances mentally.
Mentally travel,
Yeah. So and then having so much time and time to fill and space to fill within that time, I kind of put myself through a school in that way, through practice. While I was in isolation, I would just spend hours just drawing that. They give you like 2 or 3 magazines.
Okay.
And I would just spend hours, on my legal pad. I had a little yellow legal pad, and I would just draw faces and hands and just constantly, throughout the day.
Do you have any of those drawings in your possession?
It's been a very long time ago, so I don't have those drawings, but I have a ton of sketchbooks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, those are all sketchbooks, and I'm constantly, if I'm on a train and and I have the opportunity, I'm still practicing in that way. It's a bit separate from, again, doing what I do as an artist with contemporary art. Is not the same as just the immediacy of sketching and drawing someone, but it's still a very therapeutic, thing to do, especially in New York City, where you're on a train and there's so many different personalities and so many different things going on.
Yeah.
It's a way to keep me contained, and it's also a way to escape my circumstances that I'm on this train, and who knows what's going on. It's a way to meet people. It's a way to to be able to communicate with people. It's a way to promote myself as an artist. Every so often I'll meet someone who notices that I'm drawing on a train, and they'll stop me and ask for my Instagram or ask about my work, or if I'm showing anywhere in any galleries, or what I'm doing as an artist. Just people who show interest in me as an artist. So prison helped me along in that way. Another catalyst is I have a son. I have a child.
Congrats!
Thank you. Well,
so
he's a lot older now. He's 20 years old now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but at the time when he was born, my father was also incarcerated while I was young. He was in prison while I was young, and I knew that I didn't want my son to deal with those circumstances. So I pushed really hard, to try to find a job and stop, selling drugs and, commit illegal activities in order to have money. And eventually I had to move furniture. I worked at a place called Labor Ready. Mm-hmm. It was like a temp service workplace. They used to have, before social media and the internet was really popular, you would go into an office and you wait there for a few hours and you hope they have jobs available. And fortunately for me, like the pieces just started falling into place. I worked at this temporary workplace, and they sent me to SVA. They sent me to the School of Visual Arts.
Oh, wow.
To move furniture into the dorms.
Oh, wow.
So I'm moving
the
furniture.
Universe was conspiring you to bring you to that place. That's so cool.
So I'm moving furniture into the dorms, and I'm looking at, all of the art.
Yeah.
And when I got there, it was like drawings on the wall, but it wasn't, just like random scribbles.
Yeah.
It was like art. And I could see that there was art, and there was, things being added onto it. So like there was a drawing, and then it looked like someone else did another drawing, but they added onto this drawing.
Oh, wow.
And it was like I went in there and it was like drawings on the refrigerator and drawings all over the wall. But it was so neat. It wasn't just like random, scribbles everywhere. It was like really contained and neat. So I noticed all of these things, and I was really excited about it. And I was just like, where am I? And before this, again, I started out, reading comic books and looking at cartoons, and I have uncles with similar situations. Yeah. They've been incarcerated. They ended up passing away as a result of, circumstances, of living circumstances at an early age. But a lot of them collected comic books, and a lot of them would draw, and they kept sketchbooks. And I always said, if I could, I would want to fulfill the dream of, eventually becoming a comic book artist, because I felt like that was
you still can.
a part of my legacy. Yeah, maybe I'll get there. Maybe I'll get there. And I felt like that would be, something that I could show my family members and friends, the people who came before me that didn't make it as professionals, and they just saw it as a hobby. And I really wanted to push, to go higher in that way. And so I just didn't expect that, I didn't know that they had art colleges. I just didn't even know that, that existed. I mean, I may have seen like commercials, but I didn't know the opportunity was that real. So going into SBA and seeing all those drawings was like, wow, it was like, totally mind blowing.
Yeah.
Totally mind blowing.
That's amazing.
So I applied to SBA. I immediately, once the job was over, I went back within that week. And at the time, I was also dealing with some mental health issues. I was in a circumstance where, again, committing a lot of illegal activities, where I saw someone actually get killed.
I'm sorry.
And it affected me in a really bad way, and I ended up going to the hospital for some time for PTSD, and I was at an outpatient program, like a sort of therapy program, and I was, just coming into all these sorts of things, having a son, trying to, figure out my mental health, trying to work, and move forward in life and beyond, my past, and having been incarcerated, and trying to make something of myself. And fortunately, the place I was at, they gave me a stipend to apply to SBA, and I applied. I did my best, and I applied, and of course, I was rejected, because of my past. But there was the counselor there told me to apply to a CUNY school, a community college, and I applied to LaGuardia Community College, and I was accepted there, and I saw that as an opportunity, and I worked hard. Again, I completed my GED while I was in prison, so I didn't graduate from high school. Got my GED in prison, and I knew that there were some things that I was missing, so I had to take some remedial courses. But I worked really hard, and I ended up on the dean's list at LaGuardia.
That's so cool.
And LaGuardia also really opened me up to a lot of like philosophy, ideas about what's possible as far as career wise. And so I stayed at LaGuardia. I completed my associates at LaGuardia, and SBA has like scouting. They come around, they go to different schools, and they're like, looking for prospective students. And they came back around. They came to LaGuardia, and there was a guy there, and I'll never forget. His name was Chris Jessic. I believe he lives in Shanghai now. He moved to China, but he really, really helped me during that time. He came in and he said, "Look, you have really good work," and he told me, kind of what to put in my portfolio. But he also told me to, not be scared to speak about my past and to talk about my circumstances. And I think that's kind of what I was missing, was not, speaking about that, and in a way that gave an explanation that was more palatable. I was initially ashamed and not, I mentioned it, but I didn't give like an explanation of my circumstances. Yeah. So I applied to SBA again, and I got the Silas H Rhodes Scholarship. So SBA accepted me the second time I applied, and it was probably like I mean, I'm at a place where I'm reaching all of these milestones.
Yeah.
So I'm probably gonna say it again. Like every few years, I have an experience, and I'm like, this is the best thing that ever happened to me in my life.
That's amazing.
So
I feel like the 16-year-old version of you, seeing you today, would be like so proud of you.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank you.
Amazing. It's like the timeline of your life. It's like how kind of like the universe gave you like a visual. Like first, when you moved the furniture into SVA, like slowly but surely, you're in the right place at the right time.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
yeah. And I mean, even now, like I'm every time I think about it, I feel like, all right, I might start crying.
Yeah.
So,
No, I definitely like hearing everything. I think it's like beautiful. I mean, I was thinking like this would be like a great like screenplay. If somebody's listening, yeah.
Maybe I'll get towards
this. You better get those rights.
Yeah. So yeah, SVA was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, everything has a cost, and I know for people who may be watching this, they may say, college costs a lot of money, but the experience that I had there was absolutely worth it. I'm still, paying my college loan debt right now.
Yeah.
But the experience is, there's no way for me to be able to measure it, for me to quantify it with money. The staff at SVA, it's totally priceless. The staff at SVA is and this is not, I don't get paid to promote SVA.
Yeah.
But the staff are generally all professional working artists. So you have nearly all of your teachers, nearly all of the professors at SVA, if not all, have been professional working artists or are still professional working artists while they're, doing instruction at SVA. So I had the opportunity to work with real artists, and then also to work with artists whose work that I actually appreciated. Like I'm looking at someone like Stephen Assell, who's a one of my favorite painters. And, I remember maybe 2 months before I started attending courses at SVA, I started looking at artists. Again, I discovered oil painting at LaGuardia. So I'm now finding out about all of these artists who use oil paint. And I'm looking and I'm looking and I see Stephen Assell's work. And I really like this guy's work. And then I go to a gallery and you see it in person and like, wow, like, this is phenomenal work. And then I get to SVA and I'm looking at the classes and like, wait a minute, this guy's teaching a class here.
Oh,
wow. So I was able to take several classes. I was able to take 3 courses, studying with Stephen Assell.
Yeah.
And he's a phenomenal artist. He's a phenomenal person. He actually, outside of SVA, he has a studio in the city.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he probably has several studios. Yeah. He's a big name. And he welcomed several students. He's actually welcomed students to his personal studio and hired a model. And, and we're working outside of class late at night, in this guy's studio and seeing what he's working on and his his process outside of the classroom and seeing him just as a person.
Cool, yeah.
So, all of these things really affected me. Like it really, pushed me to be more thoughtful about my work, to try to push myself to be at the peak of what I'm doing. And it also, SVA also offers other classes. I started learning about philosophy, particularly existentialism at LaGuardia, but I was also able to take existentialism courses at SVA as well. Beyond just focusing on art and applying art, they have, classes that are theory and all those sorts of things. So I was able to take an existentialism course, and there was another course, and I'm not totally sure of it, but I think it's like so at illustration they have sort of like a backbone course where our focus was called Beautiful Losers. It was called Beautiful Losers. So it's basically, they give you several books.
Okay.
And even though it was focused on illustration, I know that I wanted to focus on a more of a fine art aesthetic at that time. But I needed illustration to help me with the techniques, to help me with composition, with actual drawing, with figuring out how to make my images and get to that point. So I took illustration as opposed to fine art for that reason. But the course, the Beautiful Losers course, also required a lot of reading. So for the first time, I read Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And it was so different from, so much more different from the movies. Yeah. You know, from what we see in the movies, a lot of like the depiction in the movie is that the monster is actually Frankenstein, and he's not actually the monster. He's not actually, Frankenstein is actually the scientist who created the monster.
Yeah.
And he's kind of the bad guy in the book, you know? So it put me in a place to where I had to think about things in a different way. And this combined with my philosophy, I learned a lot about, started reading about Sartre and about Jean-Paul Sartre and about Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche. I may be mispronouncing some of those names.
No, those are tough, yeah.
And most importantly for me, Albert Camus, who is an absurdist. And all of these writings, especially existentialists, you know, writers and philosophers, will also really focus on the importance of having art, you know, of maybe not just making art, but having an appreciation of art, and particularly Camus, where his aesthetic is, you know, your life. You should be using your life as a form of art. You should be designing your life. Where existentialist aesthetics are a lot about choice and about what you choose to do and how you choose to do things. And that is a means of freedom, where we don't have a level of freedom. We're locked into society, you know. So I don't have, let's say, for instance, I'm forgetting the guy's name. There's Thomas. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name.
Okay.
But he talks about being in a state of nature. And if let's say if we didn't have a society, we're in a state of nature and we don't have any rules. I have the right to steal from you. You have the right to steal from me. But until we sacrifice those rights, we agree to sacrifice those rights in a binding contract, a social contract, you know, then we can have a society that comes together. You agree to not kill me. I agree to not kill you, to not steal from you. You agree to not steal from me. And now we can, you know, coincide, and I don't have to be worried about the risk of you, you know, doing anything detrimental to me.
Yeah.
But we're also giving up those freedoms. We're also giving up those rights. So while we're doing that, now we also have the freedom of choice and how we're going to react to those things. So we have a sacrifice of some freedom, but then we also have a way of instituting another kind of freedom. And I think when I learned about that as well, it started to inform my art, and it started to inform who I am as a person. It started to, you know, shape me into who I am as a person. But also it called back to sort of like a full circle thing of my experience. I didn't mention this, but I also did some rapping when I was a kid. I used to rap, you know, when I was younger. I performed. I've been on stage a few times. You know, there was a few years where I really thought I was going to be a rapper.
Oh, that's so cool.
And the reason I mention it is because I started to think about rap music, and in the context and through the lens of existentialism. I started to tie these things together. And so, for instance, talking about choice and freedom in that way. So while I was incarcerated, I had to. Jay-Z has a line where he says, "They trap my body, they can't lock my mind." Easily explains how we adapt to crime. And I had that line, in my mind while I was incarcerated. But it's a very existential idea that, I'm incarcerated and I don't have physical freedom in that way, but I have the mental capacity to be free. I can still read. I can still escape, my circumstances through my art.
Yeah.
I can choose how I react to, these situations, or how I act within these situations, and not just reacting. So, I had the option to either, and this isn't to take away from anyone else's experience, but I have the option to have been in that cell and continue to be depressed and wither away, or I have the option to say, you know what, let me be strong and let me find ways that I can escape this situation or adapt to this situation. And it also, I'm remembering all these things now. It also calls to mind Nietzsche and, not Nietzsche, Camus again, the myth of Sisyphus. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Sisyphus. He was expelled by the gods. He questioned the gods in the wrong way. They expelled him. They sent him to Hades, and he got down there and he managed to escape Hades. And then when he came back, they're like, there's no way we can get rid of this guy. He keeps getting over on us. What can we do? They trapped him to eternity, where he had to roll a boulder up a hill. And all he can do for an eternity is just continue to roll this boulder up the hill. And once he thinks he's getting to the top, it rolls back down and he has to go back up. So Sisyphus said, you know what? I'm going to fool him again. And how can I fool him? I'll figure out a way to enjoy this. They think they're punishing me, but I'll do, everything I can to make the best of my circumstances. And that for me, even though I learned about this after, while I was in SBA, I learned about Camus and, all these sort of existentialist ideas and authors. I started to realize that these are things that that I'm very much in tune with, and that have been kind of persistent through my life. So they just reinforced it, and they made me a better person, for lack of words, and a little bit more resilient in that way. So I'm very fortunate for SBA tying in all of those ideas and getting me to this point. And from there, I graduated. I studied at SBA. I graduated, completed my BFA in illustration in 2015. But I realized I didn't want to do illustration. Illustration is a lot more taxing than fine art, and it's also a lot of telling other people's stories and I enjoy that as well, but it's also not as free as telling my own story or pushing for my own ideas. And it's much more rigorous. For an illustration, I may need to do 10 thumbnails, and then I have to choose 4 images from those, and then I have to send it to the director. And, and then the director comes back and says, I need you to fix this. I need you to fix that. So there's much less freedom, and it's much more rigorous. You're kind of a workhorse. And I knew that I tend to work at a slower pace, and that I wanted to put more thought into my work. So coming out of SBA, I knew that I didn't want to do illustration, that I wanted to move more into fine art. So I started, as a matter of fact, these are some of the paintings that I completed at SBA in 2015. And during that time, I thought I was doing something original. We learned about like paintings in antiquity and who could afford to pay for paintings, and and I said, I want to go out and paint people who are less fortunate and who couldn't afford to have their portrait painted and give them some representation. And I was so excited about it. Of course, I thought it was like the most unique thing, like who's done this before. And then I realized later on, like there have been countless people who've done that before, who've painted, people who are less fortunate. But it also, it pushed me to combine what I know as a painter and also to have something to say as an artist. So that was the culmination of that, and then from there I did some sort of minor illustration jobs, and it wasn't until very recently, I went back to SVA in 2021, around the time of the pandemic, a little bit after the pandemic, and mostly because I realized that the art world can be fickle, and I wasn't totally as sure about whether I would be successful or not. But I didn't want to stop. As an artist, I don't want to focus on, making money, even though that is extremely important. Everyone needs to pay bills, everyone needs to take care of their rent, and and I have a child, and I mean he's not a child anymore. No. He's still a child, and I still have to be able to support him. And so I needed to make, I needed to be able to pay my bills, pay my rent. But I wanted to also do something that would be equally fulfilling, and something that was also along the lines of art. So I went back to SVA to become an art educator and art teacher.
Oh, wow.
And
it's like a full circle moment. That's amazing.
Yeah. And also because I'm thinking about legacy. My son isn't very artistically inclined. I wanted him to have his own identity. So I didn't push hard in that area to have him, become an artist, because I wanted him to be his own person. Yeah. But I did consider that there are other younger people out there who may want to become an artist. And I thought about my circumstances, and what I've been through in the past. So I went back to SVA. SVA was great. They saw, what direction I was moving in. They gave me another partial scholarship, a second scholarship. And again, phenomenal staff. Wow. Catherine Roseman yes, absolutely. Wow. Kathy, she's I say it all the time. She's like another mother to me, probably to everyone there. She's, absolutely great as a support, but not just, as a support, as a human being, as an educator, and career wise. Yeah. She's phenomenal. The entire staff there is phenomenal, and so I went into SVA, and I was kind of thrust into the education aspect. So I applied to like New York Teach, or I'm not sure what exactly it was, but within maybe a month of me attending courses at SVA, I received an email asking if I wanted to sub at a school. So I had to work full time as an art teacher sub, as a substitute art teacher, while I was also attending classes for my master's at SVA.
Being a father and an artist, that's crazy.
Yeah, but I was also, here's another full circle moment. I was also fortunate that on the sub teacher page, you can choose what schools that are available, and whether or not they'll accept you there. And I chose a school that was across the street from a family shelter that my family was in when I was younger, around the time that, literally the time that I was first incarcerated. My family was in that shelter. Yeah. So I worked at that school, and I wasn't perfect. I didn't know a whole lot about writing lesson plans, and there were times where I may have been late. You know, a lot of it was overwhelming. It was learning a lot of new things and then also trying to apply them. And I tend to work a little bit slower, and I'm not making excuses for it.
No, I understand.
So I didn't do as well as I could have that year, but just the idea that I hope that I had some effect on some of the students who were in that shelter system or who lived in that neighborhood. There's a lot of public housing in the neighborhood. It's a neighborhood that isn't, it's not the Upper West Side. It's in the Lower East Side. There's not, a whole lot of, it's not a high income neighborhood. So my biggest hope was that I had some effect on some of the students there and could inspire them to push themselves further, whether it was art or whatever it is that they chose, So, I chose to be there and I had that experience and I, for me, I think it was a great experience. Professionally, I could have absolutely have done better, but I'll work from there. And then I think the next year I worked at Corona Arts and Sciences in Queens. And I did a lot better there, once you have the experience and you know what to expect. And I was still at SVA, but I got to a place where I could now, I know about making lesson plans and coming up with a curriculum and classroom management, and all of these sorts of things. And I had some experience from my previous school. So I did much better there. And I think the students appreciated me a lot more there as well. Yeah. And I think the staff appreciated me a lot more there as well. And then I also learned about, it also informed my art practice in a sense of what am I putting out and what I think people will be accepting of and what people will be interested in. So for instance, I learned a lot about social emotional learning, and there's a lot of components of the social aspect of art, how art affects people, how people work together to accomplish things, the emotional aspects of it in the context of learning, and how people can regulate their emotions through activities, through art, particularly the students. But it also made me think about culture and what I'm teaching in the schools. So for instance, as an art teacher, in most cases, you have to come up with your own curriculum. It's not like teaching history or teaching art history. So I was afforded the opportunity to teach the students about their culture. I love Picasso. I love Rubens is, one of my favorite artists. I have, a lot of books I love books. I have, tons of books of my favorite artists. But I also realized that I'm going into a school where there's a lot of students with parents from Central America, Latin American students. And I didn't want to go into those schools and teach them in a way that I wanted to give them hope and I wanted to give them inspiration and show them that there are Mexican artists that are viable. There are Ecuadorian artists that, are alive and making money and it's successful, and are being seen in museums and galleries. So I also kind of grew up with this idea that as an artist, you probably won't make any money until you die, or you won't be famous until you die, and I think in a lot of circumstances, especially in neighborhoods where there's lower income, that's kind of narrative. So I was fortunate to be, put in a place where I can speak to those students in that way, where I can say, here's an artist from Ecuador or from Guatemala, or here's an art form from there, as opposed to the Western history that I've learned, where I can share with them a part of their history, and help them add on to their history, and if they want to, to move forward as an artist and push that legacy further within their own culture. So, for instance, I love Halloween. Like it's my absolute favorite holiday. Yeah. But I'm in a school with, again, mostly Central American students. So I broke the lesson down into the Day of the Dead and also a celebration of Halloween. But through my celebration of Halloween, I wanted to focus more on art techniques. I had several classes of students who actually chose to be there. So they were willing to learn how to draw. They were willing to learn how to paint. So I said, let's focus on, maybe doing still lifes, something that I learned how to do, as an artist, to learn technique. So we did still life, we did pumpkins and gourds to represent like the fall and the aspect of Halloween. But then again, I wanted to focus on their culture. So we learned about lino cut prints, about printmaking. And I know printmaking is pretty big in Mexico, where they use printmaking for a lot of different ceremonies and a lot of parties, and because it's able to be mass produced easier, and also the fact that they have their own holiday. So I said, let's have a class where we're doing printmaking, but it's focused on the Day of the Dead. And it gives the students the opportunity to celebrate their culture, but also learn a technique that they can apply, and a technique that they can be successful with. I don't know if you've ever been in Jackson Heights. There's a lot of a lot of commerce, in some areas, and often you see people with tables, you see people with like churro stands, you see all these different things. If you're walking down like Broadway, I believe it is, you'll see like all of the stores and you see all of the vendors. And again, it gave me the opportunity to tell these students, if you're worried about, whether or not you're going to be making some money as an artist, you can make prints. Now you have this ability, what the tools are, what the materials are. You've made some of these prints. You're going to go home with, this linoleum that you've carved yourself, and you know how to make these prints. All you need to do is buy the ink, have some paper ready, and you can make more prints. And you can go out and set up a table and sell those prints.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So it helped me, and it helped me with my lesson plans in that way. But I also hope to help inspire those students to feel like they can be successful, that they can, be able to sustain themselves as artists, and then also to be proud of their culture and not feel like,
see themselves in the world.
Yeah, that we're not, like I said, I appreciate Picasso and I appreciate Warhol and, all of their work. But a lot of times, if we don't see that there are people like us who can accomplish these things, it may feel a little bit far off, So I really wanted to be able to offer that.
As you previously mentioned, when you were like 16 and getting in trouble because you didn't have some enough let's say guidance, as you said, I don't think you realized even though you didn't have that, you became that for somebody else. Do you know what I'm saying?
I
if
hope
you think
so.
about it, I'm just so amazed by the timeline of your life.
Yes.
And how little by little the universe pushed you in the right way.
Yeah.
Giving little clues. And then now you became the exact part, a hero almost, I think, to the people that you taught. Because I interviewed a lot of people and I never seen somebody, talk about their students saying, I wanted them to see themselves in what they're learning. So I think that's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's really amazing.
Well, I feel it's kind of cliche, but my story is kind of like a typical hero's journey tale. The hero's journey, you deal with some situation, you leave, you learn something, you come back, and then you sort of seen as a hero if you can inspire other people to overcome the circumstances.
I feel like in the future they might be getting interviewed, and the way you talked about Kathy, they're going to be talking about you, let's say 10, 20 years from now.
I would hope so. I would love it. There's every once in a while also. So I've also worked at outside of SVA. I've worked at some private schools. Being an educator is at this time, I'm still seeking employment. It's not as easy, you know, and so I've had to work at, you know, whatever I can take here, there, you know, along with completing my art. Like I'm doing illustration. It's okay. I'm doing illustration. I'm teaching at some schools. I may be at one school for a week, however long they need me, and then hoping to go to another school. But every once in a while, I'll bump into one of my students. And for me, the best thing is either having the students recognize you and stop and talk to you, because you know I've been a student before, and I know the feeling of like, that's one of my teachers coming. I don't want to talk to this guy. You know, you're kind of getting out of the way, you know. But I also know the feeling of being around one or two teachers that I trust and that I care about, or that I felt like at least cared about me. And when you see them, you recognize them, and you're like, you know, I remember my kindergarten teacher, you know, to this day. Oh, wow. And I saw her a few years ago on a train.
No way, really?
Yeah, I saw her a while ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago on a train. And immediately, Miss Tenoit, you know, I remember her name. I remember her face. And she you know, she was a lot older now, but I recognized her. I knew who she was. So I hope, you know, when I do, like I said, I've been on a train myself, and I'm walking through, you know, last year sometime, I'm walking through, the A train has this long passage, I think at 42nd Street. And I saw one of my students, a younger female student, and at the time she was in middle school, and she graduated to high school. And this happened twice. You see students when they're younger, and you see them and you're like, I kind of think I know that person. And you're like, wait a minute, they must have went through puberty or something, like a little bit older. And you know, for me, the best feeling is when they recognize you, you know, and they stop you and they're like, hey teacher, hey Mr. J, hey Mr. F, you know, whatever the case is. And for me, it says that, you know, at least they remembered me, and at least they felt comfortable enough to say something to me and not avoid me. So, you know, I've had those circumstances, and even very recently, I taught on 14th Street at Grace Church. There was a program there, Go Project, and again, very short summer program, and I'm on 14th Street, and I just relocated to Harlem recently, and about a week ago, I'm on 125th Street in Harlem. Oh wow! And I see students there, and I saw a student with their parent, and you see so many of these kids as an educator that you just kind of like, I kind of remember that person, so you wave, you know, and I waved, and the girl, you know, she got excited and she's like, "That's my art teacher. That's my art teacher." Oh, wow. And so you're able to see, you know, the parents and how the parents, you know, how they appreciate it, and me being a parent as well, and having had a student in the public school system, you know, and knowing some of the ins and outs of, you know, how parents and teachers interact, and that there, in some cases, has been and can be somewhat of a rift between parents and teachers. This sort of thing of, you know, where sometimes the parents feel like they're not, you know, working in accordance with the teacher. They kind of feel like, you know, the teacher may be working against them. You know, this teacher may not be interested in my student, or may not like my child, or whatever the case is. So for me, it was also, a lot of that is also, you know, not going beyond just the student, and extending, you know, to the parent, and letting them know that I'm here for them. I'm here for, you know, I'm here for the student and for you. You know, I'm on your side. You know, I'm here to help. So that's been a phenomenal experience. Like just feeling like I'm doing something substantial. Like my life is worth something. And I'm a water bag, man. There's been times where I've been teaching and I get on my lunch break and I just break down and start crying. I'm walking down the street and
that's healthy. That's, you know, that's how it should be.
Yeah, because it feels like my life is worth something.
Yeah.
And beyond, I kind of want to mention as a side, beyond teaching, I'm also doing some work as an activist and where incarcerated people are concerned. So I've worked on some books. I have worked in a book. Let me see. I'm gonna grab it really quickly. I think this is one of the more important books that I have here. So these are a few books that just some of the publications that I worked in. This is Prisons of Creativity, and it's by John R. Whitman, and it's actually more of a textbook type of form. So it's actually a college book, but it's a book that's focused on while you're incarcerated, what do you own as an artist? So for instance, if I paint or draw on a prison sheet, being that the sheet is issued by the state, does it still belong to the state, or is it my?
Wait, I never thought about this. So they would take it away from you?
They can, or is it my? Is it now my property because it's art? It's been modified in a way, maybe it's been cut to a certain size. Then I've also drawn on it. Does that art now belong to me, or does it still belong to the state? So that's what this entire book is about. And this, again, it's a means of being an advocate.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
and I have some.
So cool.
Yeah, I have some drawings in there. Just like I have maybe 2 drawings in that book.
Yeah, definitely check it out. Once we wrap it up, this is really cool. I'll definitely share this on the podcast. This is available for purchase online?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
And the book is Prisons of Creativity by John R. Whitman. That's so cool.
Yeah. And then this isn't an art focused book. This is a book by Craig Taylor, and it's New Yorkers, a city, and its people in our time. And it's kind of like a verbal account of my experience of having been an artist, a formerly incarcerated artist in New York City. So it's basically just like a conversation of, just me talking.
Yeah.
And he edited it really well so that it's in everyone's voice, but there's several chapters ahead. It's like,
I'll definitely check it out. That's also available for...
Yes.
What's the best way to get it? Like Amazon or their own website?
I believe both books are on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah. And that book may actually, if it's not on Amazon, I believe it's on... I believe Routledge has a site that it's on. The publishing company.
How do you pronounce it?
Routledge? I believe. Routledge. I'm not sure. And so I've also... there's an art collector, philanthropist, just phenomenal person, Agnes Gunn.
Oh yeah.
I've been fortunate to be included in. She has like a birthday celebration.
Oh wow.
That I'm not sure if they do it every year or if I'm just new to it.
Yeah.
But she has a birthday celebration where they compile work from artists. You dedicate a piece to her, or you make a small piece for her, or a card. And this book isn't published. It's more of like a collector's item. But I feel really, I feel great to have been included in it. I mean, I'm in a book with Jeff Koons, Rashid Johnson, like
great artists.
I can't. Here's my actual piece there.
Oh wow, you did that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. It was just like her.
Thank you.
This is so cool. Thank you. Oh,
but
wow.
I mean, there's the list of artists that I'm included within that, within that book.
It's a great piece.
Thank you.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And this is a recent
yeah, this is recent. This is for Aggie's 85th birthday.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, I mean, like Richard Serra, Cindy Sherman, Micheline Thomas, like they, to be
the best, yeah.
included, with those artists is, to me, is a really big deal. And it makes me feel, again, it makes me feel great as an artist, as a person. It makes me feel like people care about what I'm doing, that I'm moving in the right direction.
You are, for sure.
And very recently, so I also, again, I'm doing a lot of publications and doing a lot of work, illustration work, and moving into, I'm trying to move away from that soon, but I still really do enjoy it. And this is a magazine. It's called Dr. Clean Magazine. It's a magazine that is, I'm not sure if they're going to continue, but it's by a film producer.
Okay.
And I really like, what do you call them? Grindhouse movies, like B-list movies, like movies that are intentionally bad, like, for entertainment. But so I came across this movie and I got into a discussion about it with someone online, with, I believe, one of the directors online. Okay. And I mentioned, I just like bad movies. I like intentionally bad movies. Well, I'm trying to think of, like, there's a movie called The Stuff.
Okay.
I think James Gunn I think he may have started off doing those movies. I could be wrong. It's one of those big name producers. I could be wrong about who it is, but they started off doing like really bad movies, and now they're a really famous producer. And then also, Toxic Avengers. I'm not sure if you know Toxic Avengers. They just remade the movie, so it should be coming out soon, either this year or next year. And it's a movie from the 80s, another really bad B-list movie. But I've worked with I'm kind of going on a tangent right now, but I worked with there's a it's called Trauma. There's a company called Trauma, but I feel so bad I can't remember his name, and he's like one of my favorite producers ever. But his daughter actually makes films now.
Oh wow!
So it was a very weird thing. Like, I've been following this guy's movies for years, and like binge watching his movies and like trying to get other people interested, and his daughter contacted me.
No way!
Just like out of the blue, contacted me, and she said, "Look, we know, we saw some of your work, and we're doing this film about prisons, and they're working on a film called The Alabama Solution." Okay. And it's about the sheer amount of deaths in the Alabama prison system. I think one year within 2 years, there was something like close to 1,000 deaths, like either murders or suicides.
Is that where they found like all those bodies buried, like in the behind the prison or something?
I think so. I believe so. So she contacted me to do some art for her film, but again, it was just like, wait a minute, I grew up watching this guy's movies, and then I'm
telling you, the universe is like has your back, because everything is like always like little full circle moments.
Insane. I'm
that's so cool.
Yeah, I'm looking at her name and I'm like, this name looks familiar, and I said, let me look it up, and I looked it up, and sure enough, that's her dad. And so I worked with her, but then so I did some work in this magazine, and this again wasn't an actual illustration. Like, it wasn't an actual illustration job, but I started working on these like,
that's really cool.
Sort of like, I call them sad Muppets. They're just like, Muppets. And I wanted to do something initially that isn't, hey, you can take a look. I wanted to do something that isn't, directly human. I wanted to do something
it's not human, but it's so relatable. Like, it's you feel the emotion. You know what I mean? It's so heavy.
So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something that made you feel a sense of empathy or sympathy or just have some feeling that you can relate to something that isn't human. Yeah. But and also as a means of therapy. At the time, I was going through, a breakup in a relationship, and a little bit depressed about it and stressed out. And I felt like, this would be a good way to get some art done, but also a way to be a little bit more lighthearted and comical about it, and not, have that feeling of being dragged down by like an actual depiction of a person being depressed,
Yeah, this is much more relatable. Yeah, I mean, your story is amazing. Thank you for sharing this. I'll make sure to put this on the Instagram.
Thank you.
But I think you're like in such an interesting time of your life. I think the best time of your life. What do you see for yourself like in the future? Like, what's next for you that you would like to tackle?
At this time, I really want to continue making art. I think maybe because I'm in a different circumstance as some of the other artists that I'm familiar with, where I'm a little bit older, and I started a little bit later, and because I'm still kind of wrestling with seeing this as a sole means of income, and wondering about whether or not I'm going to compromise my ideals or my work, based on the idea that I need to make money, and being sort of not worried about it, but a little bit more reserved about it. That I haven't thought about this in a way as a career, like, as with education, where I'm saying, if I start here, within 5 years I can be here, and I can do this, and I can get that done. This is more of just a journey to me, where I kind of just want to pull my ideas out and establish my ideas and have those ideas ready to show. So I really just want to continue working. I have ideas that I want to, like I said, that I want to accomplish and I want to show, but I just want to continue working. It's not like, and I don't want to seem like I don't have hope, but it's not like when I was a kid, and when you're a kid and like, when I turned 18,
you're just thinking grown,
you're
like business minded, which is normal.
Oh, when you're a kid, you're like, when I turn 18, I'm gonna have a car, I'm gonna have a mansion. I'm just at the place of like, I just want to keep making art. I just want the opportunity to keep making art, whatever it takes. And I would love to continue to be in galleries and museums. I just sent a self-portrait to the Kimball Art Center in Utah.
Oh, nice.
So I've never even been to Utah. So it's
Right. I think, I mean, speaking from you for this podcast episode, I think like just me thinking in the future, I think like a retrospective of your work would be amazing, because you did say you've been like creating since you were young. So I hope you do have like those early on drawings or anything. That would be so dope to see.
Unfortunately, I don't. Unfortunately, I don't. I think I have maybe nearly 10 years of sketchbooks there.
Oh, wow.
That I've done a lot of work just like compiling my sketchbooks, and there's sort of a history of what I'm doing. My most recently completed sketchbook here. And so, if you are interested, I also have on my website, I have a video that was done by a production company called Model Pictures.
Okay.
And it's just a really short video about sort of similar stuff about my life, about me having been incarcerated and what I do as an artist, and my son, and how all those sorts of things affected me. But they really focus on me drawing on a train, and so a lot of what I do is, this is one of my more recent sketchbooks, and it's just recently completed. And I use these. Here are the actual drawings really cool from their magazine, and I use these in several ways, as a means of therapy, as a means of work. This was actually from a movie project. So I use it sometime to work through things. They're all purpose.
Oh, that's from
through
the
things.
mat.
Yes,
That's my favorite sculpture there. I forget the name of it.
Yeah. It's let's see if I wrote it down.
It's a great drawing.
Why Born Enslaved by John Baptiste Capo.
Yeah. Oh.
So, I tend to, and this is again from life,
Yeah.
just going to the Met and drawing from life. This was another artist, Liu Suzaraja at PS1.
Mhm.
And, just looking at things and drawing things,
so cool.
more people on the train and, practicing. Just,
Oh, wow.
this is just basically what I do when I have
You're able
time.
to capture not only like the subject but the emotion that person is feeling, and then convey it to the person. Because like I don't know any of these people, but like I can kind of feel what they're feeling. You know what I mean? Like being on the
Yes.
train after a long day, work sucks. I'm so tired. Gotta go home and cook. Like that type of vibe.
Yeah.
You portray that so well.
Thank you. So I think that psychology is also really important to me.
Yeah.
Is trying to find ways to depict the humanity of people
Yeah.
and not just drawing a person.
Yeah.
Because I'll always be chasing reality.
Yeah.
I don't want to like feel like I'm taking away from anyone else or what anyone else is doing as far as like art. But I think by the definition of the word abstract,
Yeah.
I think what I'm doing for me would be considered abstract art.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people consider it figurative,
Mhm.
based on the idea that there's figurative. There are actually people being shown here and objects being shown here. But if you think about the definition of the word abstract, to abstract,
Yeah.
to abstract something means to take away from something.
Yeah.
And I'm directly taken away from life and from nature. I'm directly taken away from, the world that I see around me. So I'm abstracting this information and repurposing it
Yes.
to try to depict it in a way that is as accurate as I can make it. And so I see myself as an abstract artist in that
Yeah.
sense, not in a traditional sense. And that gives me, it puts me in a place where I'll always be chasing. I'll never be able to draw actual skin, no matter how well I'll paint it. I can paint it photographically,
Yeah.
but it's not actually the skin.
Yeah.
It's just a painting of the skin. It's like, who said it? This is not a pipe. The Marguerite, was that Rene Magritte?
Maybe.
He has the painting where he has the piping on the bottom. It's in French.
Oh.
No, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not French. So, but he has that the painting where he mentions that this is not a pipe. It's a painting.
Yeah.
It's a depiction of a pipe.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't like to, I don't like to be pigeonholed in that sense of like, whether or not what I'm doing is abstract or if it's one thing or the other. And then also Milton Glaser, he's also one of my favorite artists. He's a graphic designer. He did the I Love New York t-shirts. He designed those. Literally he designed that. Didn't get paid for it because by the time it got out, people were making t-shirts and you can't sue everybody for it. But he said, and I don't want to like totally misconstrue the quote or mess it up, but he said the greatest enemy of art is the institutionalization of styles. And I think when we start separating those styles, I think right now we're in a great era where you can have a gallery where you can have what's called figurative or what's called abstract alongside photography or alongside video or alongside sound. You have all these different mediums that or techniques or styles that, you know, that can be brought together. But for me, I don't want to limit myself. So right now I am working in a much more obvious and figurative way, but I don't see myself as, you know, as just solely a figurative artist or just a figurative artist.
Yeah.
You know, I just see myself as an artist who's exploring and you know, trying to find my place, my way to communicate.
Yeah.
And yes, the psychology again is very important to me. I want to be able to show humanity and as empathetic a way as I can, and without, sometimes that also is an issue, is like, am I inserting myself too much into the work, you know, and trying my hardest to like depict this person as they are, you know, if they're sad, if they're happy, if there's a slight smirk on their face, if they're, you know, engaged with what they're doing on their phone, if they're shocked about it, if they're surprised, if they're tired, like you said, they're coming home from a long day.
We capture it so well, yeah.
But then also documents, and I have another book up there that around the time of COVID, I was an essential worker during COVID, and I you know, for me it was like a continuation of history. You see, like where some artists like George Gross is you know, doing paintings of during wartime, and like you know bodies being, you know, shot, and you know, people, you know, death, depictions of death, or like what is it, Goya. I absolutely love Goya, absolutely in my heart. But he also has like I forget what it's called. I think they're called the something of war. But he has all of these prints that are like sort of like the casualties of war.
Yeah.
So for me, being on a train and you know, doing all these drawings of people with their masks and like people trying to social distance and all of these sorts of things, that was my way of documenting that sort of war.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm you know, going along in essence with that sort of, not legacy, but that process. You know, so that those are things that are really important to me. And even now, this is my most recent sketchbook. I think maybe within like the last day or two, I did some drawings in here, and I'm still just drawing people on the train and documenting my experience and more movie stuff. I believe this was from the Alabama Solution, the movie I worked on. And I'm currently working on a movie with Faith Ringgold. Not with Faith Ringgold. She has some art. The movie's called, well, not currently working on it. The movie is actually out. It's like, it's been shot at some indie theaters. It was at Sundance. It's called, it's actually by Catherine Gunn.
Okay.
Agnes Gunn's daughter.
Oh, wow.
So and she's a phenomenal director and producer. It's amazing what some of these people can do. You see one film and you're like, oh, I really like that film. Then you see another one and like,
I like this better.
I like this one too, but it's so vastly different. Like this movie that we worked on was kind of like, oh, well, here's my sort of comic book influence. I'm still, you know, haven't given up on that.
That's really
and these are, again, working through ideas. This is so this is sort of a part of my process. And you can see, let me drop that there. You can see like some of the motif. Yeah. Similar idea of the motif there.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And I'll talk about that in a bit. But these are you know, this was one that I referenced that's showing at the Center for Art and Advocacy, but it's also done on a prison mirror. Oh, wow. And so yeah, just trying my best to depict people in a way that I feel like is respectful and dignified, and you know, shows them some reverence to humanity, you know, to show my love for society and humanity. I'm always conflicted. Like I said, I'm an introvert. So I'm always like, I don't want to be around these people. I want to go home. But then I'm also like, you know, you get to the end of the day and like, people are really good. Yeah. You know, most people are really good. And I really do care about other people. Yeah. So a lot of that is also, you know, a lot of what I'm doing is, you know, trying to show that as well.
All right. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. I love hearing about just the timeline of your work, your creative process. If you don't mind sharing again your Instagram and website with us.
My Instagram is Jaiquan _Fayson.
Perfect. Can you just spell that for all the English and the second language people like me, please?
JAIQUAN _FAYSON. And it's JAIQUAN FAYSON.com.
Thank you so much again. And make sure to look out on the Instagram and on the YouTube account. We're going to be doing like an in-depth video of all the details and all the background of his paintings. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I can't wait to see a future retrospective of your work. I know that's going to happen. The universe has your back.
Thank you.
Until we see again for sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I love
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Tariq Talk. Follow Tariq Talk on all social media channels and check out the video interviews online.